Nonno, CEO of the Institute. And with me today are our fabulous ASL interpreters, Hope Simon and Gabe Gomez. Shirley Chisholm said, "You don't make progress by standing on the sidelines, whimpering and complaining. You make progress by implementing ideas." And although it was started in 1926, Black history, it's not a month. The stories, the accomplishments, and the contributions of African Americans needs to be shared every day, which is the theme of our CJ Salon. Today, you will hear our new research story about the portrayals of Black women in Hollywood, and then you will hear from our esteemed group of guest speakers on how they are harnessing the power of their voice and their platforms to create, influence, and advocate for Black women, as well as other underrepresented groups and people. We are extremely grateful to our partners and our co-hosts, Facebook and SAG-AFTRA. And without further ado, I would love to welcome Jen Barrett, Head of Entertainment, Creative Shop at Facebook, and Deborah Riley Draper, Writer and Director.
Thank you so much, Madeline. It's great to see you today. Hello to everyone. We're excited to be with you all and welcome you to Portrayals of Black Women in Hollywood, a discussion presented by Facebook in partnership with SAG-AFTRA and the Geena Davis Institute on Gender and Media. I'm Jen Barrett, Head of Entertainment at Facebook's Creative Shop team, and also founder of our SCENE program for representation in the entertainment industry. SCENE was founded in 2017 to address this gap in representation, supporting screen storytellers from underrepresented communities to help them harness the audiences and opportunities across Facebook to connect more people to their stories in more meaningful ways to help them be seen. And this year, just a few weeks ago at the Sundance Film Festival with the Black House Foundation, we announced the expansion of our SCENE program, the SCENE Black Filmmakers Program, a year-long effort to support Black filmmakers at every stage in their career, at the student, independent, and established levels, people with projects and titles at the studios, networks, and streaming services we know and love. We launched the program with our inaugural class of 100 Black student filmmakers, many of whom are tuning in today. This expansion could not have been possible over the years without amazing partners, and I'm honored to be joined by one of them today, award-winning writer, director, and SCENE alum, Deborah Riley Draper. We are inspired by the work that GDI continues to do in this space and hope to use it to inform future SCENE projects and work. Now I'll hand it over to Deborah to share more about herself, her work, and today's panel discussion. Deborah.
Thank you so much, Jen. It's an honor to be here. My name's Deborah Riley Draper, and I'm a writer and director from Atlanta. I'm both inspired and accountable to tell the intentionally and unintentionally dismissed stories, characters, and places that make up Black history, and especially the ones about the complicated lived experiences of Black women. I know and appreciate how important this research is to the future of storytelling. My documentary work, Versailles 73, explored Black models who changed fashion in 1973. And Olympic Pride, American Prejudice delved into 18 Black Olympians who defied Hitler and Jim Crow at the 1936 Olympics. Their stories, their perspectives were brought to the screen in their own words. And what's important is that seeing all aspects of the African American experience not only expands the aperture of the American narrative, but it helps us all increase awareness, understanding, and empathy. The progress and future of marginalized storytellers and communities are inextricably linked to the sharing of our stories and the transfer of knowledge. While there has been more representation of women of color in the media, GDI saw a need to go beyond just presence and take a deeper dive into the types of roles that are being played by Black women. Every sector and every industry has to identify and own the role of illuminating the injustices and shifting positively the impressions and perceptions around marginalized populations. We believe this research and the conversation that follows will help us gain clarity on how we can all partner to make these injustices right and make powerful change forever. And now I'll pass this back to Madeline to introduce our next speaker. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Jen. Thank you so much, Deborah. And now, without further ado, it is such an honor to introduce one of our besties, one of our longtime and ferocious partners, the one, the only, Gabrielle Carteris, president of SAG-AFTRA.
Madeline, thank you. Thank you so much. I can't even tell you how excited I am about this panel and about today. I feel like the work that Madeline, that you've been doing, and Geena, that you've been doing, it's almost like you've been preparing all these years for this moment in time, and it's so welcome. I want to give a very special thank you to not just Madeline, but to Geena and your institute for conducting this incredibly important and timely research. I've been following you for years, and it is just riveting what's coming out of your organization. The work you've been doing has never been more important. I'm thrilled to be able to share your findings with all of our members who are joining online today. I have to say, we are also very honored to be partnering, not with just Geena Davis, but Facebook, and bringing this phenomenal panel together. SAG-AFTRA actually, and you know this, has admired and supported the work of the Geena Davis Institute for many years now. Their mission has always been to improve on-screen representation. You have to see it to be it. That is the phrase. And it's not only a phrase, but it is a truth that must be manifested in our work. We at SAG-AFTRA know that our strength is in our diversity. And after all, we are the faces and the voices that entertain and inform America and actually the world. SAG-AFTRA strives to increase not only the quantity, but the quality of opportunities and representation for women of color. And over the past few years, we have seen a move in the right direction when it comes to representation of Black women on screen. But with that, it's important to know there's still so much work that has to be done. The work of the Geena Davis Institute shines a light on the areas where we can make those improvements quickly. That is the beauty of this fictional world we create and bring to life. We have the ability and the responsibility to portray a world we want to see, to portray a world that we truly live in. So without further ado, I want to introduce someone who really needs no introduction. She is a two-time Oscar winner and was most recently awarded the Jean Harshel Humanitarian Award for her work in promoting gender parity on screen. She's also the founder of the chair of the Geena Davis Institute on Gender in Media. Please welcome the incomparable Geena Davis.
Thank you, Gabrielle, for that wonderful introduction. And I agree with you that this is a very exciting day. Welcome to all of you with us today. Very happy that you're here. And I want to add my thanks to our partners at Facebook and of course SAG-AFTRA for sponsoring this event. Today we are going to share our findings from our new report, which is called Portrayals of Black Women in Hollywood. And you're going to hear from our esteemed guest speakers who will share their experiences and insights on how to ensure that the stories and voices of Black women can be woven into all of our storytelling. Black women's history in Hollywood has been decades of misrepresentation and harmful stereotypes that have had a significant impact on our culture, especially on young Black girls and how they view themselves and their value to society. Black female characters are still boxed in by colorism and white standards of beauty. For example, only 1 in 5 Black female lead characters have a dark skin tone, and over 57% appear with hairstyles that conform to European standards of beauty, as opposed to being portrayed with natural hair. Our hope is that the content creators here with us today will consider these findings when creating and casting Black female characters. We all have the power to improve Black female representation. And on that note, I will hand it back over to Madeline. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Geena. And now one of the moments that we've been waiting for, I'd love to welcome our lead investigators for our research, Dr. Caroline Heldman, Vice President of Research and Insights for the Institute, and Dr. Ninochka McTaggart, Senior Researcher for the Institute. Take it away, Caroline and Nosh.
Hi, I'm very honored to be able to present our new data on our report, Black Women in Hollywood. So a little bit about the Institute. We're currently focused on the representations of 6 identities, including gender, race, LGBTQ, disability, age, and body size. But we're also interested in looking at the intersectionalities of these identities. So I wanted to first introduce the primary authors of this report. So other than myself, we have Dr. Vanessa Cox, who has actually transitioned into an awesome position at Viacom CBS as a senior analyst in their Office of Global Inclusion. We also have Dr. Caroline Heldman, who will be presenting with me, who is our VP of Research and Insights. As far as our advisory board goes, we have Dr. Lester Spence out of Johns Hopkins University and D'Angela Proctor, who is the CEO of Wayfarer Entertainment. So the methodology for this study, we looked at 42 Black female leads and co-leads from the top 100 grossing films between 2009 and 2019. For our film data set included 957 female characters in the top grossing family films rated G, PG, or PG-13 of the year 2019. As far as the television data set, it included over 1,800 female characters in the 50 most watched shows for kids, ranging from ages 2 to 13. So I wanted to go a little bit into how Black women have been represented in Hollywood over time. We see historically 3 tropes that keep coming up. So that's the mammy trope, the Jezebel trope, and the sapphire trope. The mammy trope represents a Black woman, often of large body type and who is dark skinned, who is the caretaker of white children. So this comes out of the legacy of slavery, where Black women would have to take care of their master's children. This trope also represents Black women as asexual, as sometimes masculine, and a woman who's really putting her own needs over, who puts the children that she takes care of over anything else. So there's a picture here on the left of Hattie McDaniel with her Oscar that she won for her role as Mammy in Gone with the Wind. So the idea that she is simply known as Mammy and doesn't have a name for her role, it shows that she is without personality or agency. So she's just known as her identity as caretaker. We also have the Jezebel trope, which comes up quite often, and it's a woman who uses her sexual prowess as a means of control. And we see that usually Black female actresses who were lighter skinned and who had like quote unquote good hair with straightened European styles are the Jezebel trope. We see the sapphire trope as an angry, masculinized woman who is emotionally irrational and bitter. And one thing I wanted to point out is that we're seeing that the Black femininity is being opposed to white femininity here. So it's the idea that they are not necessarily conforming to the norm of this demure white European standard of femininity. So we've evolved now. Now we have the tropes of strong Black woman, angry Black woman, and the welfare queen / baby mama trope. So I'll go into a little bit of these. So the strong Black woman trope is the idea that a Black woman can endure any pain, she can push through adversity, and she puts her own self-care at the very bottom of the list. The angry Black woman trope is the idea that a Black woman is very ill-tempered, hot-tempered, aggressive to others, kind of at the drop of a hat. And also the welfare queen speaks to the stereotype that Black women are dependent on the government for their financial well-being. They don't have a job or a career. And then the baby mama trope speaks to this hypersexualization that we see a lot of in Black women and their representations, and the idea that they are only a baby mama, they're never a wife, right, or a partner, and they are identified by their ability to bear children and their sexuality. So let's go a little bit into the findings for Black female leads in family films. So here we see that Black female characters make up only about 3.7% of leads in the last decade. But I do want to note that there has been an uptick, as we see, especially in the past 3 or 4 years here. So as far as skin tone goes, and speaking to the previous slides, we see there's a preference for lighter and medium skin tone when we look at Black female leads. And we see about 19% of Black female leads have dark skin tones, again, reaffirming this idea that a European standard of beauty is more attractive or appealing. We also see a similar trend with hairstyles. We see there's a preference to European hair, extensions, wigs, people wearing their hair straight versus natural hairstyles. So then I will toss it over to Caroline for her part of the presentation.
Thank you, Dr. McTaggart. So as was noted in the methodology, we had 3 data sets that we're working with. The first is what Dr. McTaggart just presented, which is the data set on Black female leads from the past decade. The second data set are representations of Black female characters in family films from 2019. And the third data set is family TV from 2019. So I'm only going to go into family films given limited time. This is a teaser. If you want to know more about the data, please go to our website and download the report. So I'm going to start with all the good news first. Very good news, Black girls and women are 6.5% of the population in the US. And when it comes to the top grossing family films of 2019, we see that the numbers are almost there, right? 6.1% Black female characters. And then in terms of leads, 5.7%. So compare this to the last decade, where you have just over 3% of Black female leads compared to 6%, almost 6% now. So what we see is a major story of progress in that Black girls and women are more likely to show up in family films than a decade ago, and they're also more likely to show up in leading positions. We also find some other positive findings. First, Black female characters are less likely to be shown in service jobs. And this is important because previous research finds that Black characters in general and Black women in particular are often showing up in content, in media content, behind the counter, in a restaurant, serving folks, taking care of especially white people's children. And so it's a really positive finding that we show that Black female characters in 2019 in popular family films are less likely to show up in service jobs. And I wanted to say there's nothing wrong with service jobs, but there is something wrong when you have a statistically significant difference in who is appearing in what type of job. We also have a very positive finding in terms of STEM jobs, that Black female characters, this is girls and women, that's why we're using the term female as a catch-all term. We find that Black female characters are more likely than other female characters of color and white female characters to be shown in a STEM occupation. This is especially important because only 2.5% of STEM jobs in the US are held by Black women. And just a quick note, when we're talking about other female characters of color, we are talking about Asian, Asian American, South Asian, Latinx, Native and Indigenous, and other women of color. So that's all in one category in order to highlight the data stories for Black female characters. We also have another very positive finding that Black female characters are just as likely as white female characters to be shown as leaders. And they're significantly more likely to be shown in a position of leadership than other female characters of color. And just to be clear, leadership can be formal leadership or informal leadership. It can be a CEO, it can be someone who's a leader in the military, or it could be someone in their neighborhood who has people follow them on a project. Also, another positive finding, we find that Black female characters are more likely than other female characters to be shown as smart. And in order to get the category smart or a rating of smart as a character, you have to be really intelligent in your representation or depiction. You also it has to be an integral part of your character. So I want to pull out another really important data story here, which is that a majority of Black female characters in family films, and most popular family films, are shown as very smart. Quite a positive representation for Black girls and women. Now some negative findings. We do find that Black female characters are more likely than white female characters, and about as likely as other female characters of color to be shown as nude. Now, again, not necessarily a judgment on nudity or objectification, but more looking at the statistically significant differences between the groups and why it is that Black women and other women of color are more likely to be sexualized than white women. What we find, though, is on the flip side with attractiveness, that Black female characters are actually less likely to be shown as attractive. And this fits with what Dr. McTaggart had noted with both the mammy and the sapphire tropes, which have carried forward the idea that Black women are more likely to be shown as masculinized, as not conforming to feminine standards of white feminine standards of attractiveness. We also find that Black female characters are significantly more likely to be shown as violent than other female characters, and they're less likely to be shown in a relationship. And I'll couple this with a finding that I'm not showing a slide for, which is that they're also less likely to be shown having sexual partners. So just to summarize these findings with previous findings on sexualization, when it comes to the most popular family films, Black female characters are more likely than other female characters to be sex objects, but they are less likely to be sexual subjects as measured by relationships and sexual partners. So shifting now to the last part of the research presentation, what can we do to take action around this? First, be aware of the persistent stereotypes affecting Black girls and women, and avoid them in writing, casting, and every stage of production. Make sure to cast Black girls and women with a diversity of skin tones and hairstyles. And again, we're not making a judgment about hairstyles, but more about the freedom and diversity of Black women's characters that we're seeing on screen. Also, be hyper conscious of hypersexualization of Black women and how that fits with the Jezebel stereotype, and avoid objectification of Black girls and women in content. Also, be very cautious about writing Black characters in general and service professions, given that that's an old stereotype. And also be cautious about writing Black girls and women as violent characters, and depict them more in romantic relationships as being sexual subjects instead of just sexual objects. And now I'll pass the baton back to Dr. McTaggart for our last slide.
So we can take even further action steps, adding to what Dr. Heldman was talking about. So we see these efforts recently to increase diversity and representation for the number of women and the number of people of color. But what we're asking is to look at this intersectionally. So it's the idea that we need to consider Black women in our efforts to make content more diverse and inclusive. And we actually see in the research that if a cast is more diverse, it actually has a wider audience appeal, and it actually does better at the box office. So also we need to hire more diverse writers, more diverse directors, and also focus on inequitable hiring practices. So although we have representation on the screen and behind the scenes, we also need people of color in key decision-making roles. There's been little improvement in this realm in the last 2 decades, so this is something we should focus on. And studios must truly commit to this mission, right? To be anti-discriminatory in their hiring practices, and really taking the action and not just setting a policy and not following through on that. So that's really important for us. So thank you. I think that completes our portion of the talk.
Well, thank you so much, Dr. Heldman. Thank you so much, Dr. McTaggart. And just for everyone to know that the report will be up on our website after our event. You'll be able to download it. And of course, for all of our members. We are happy to present the study to you, as well. So I'm really, really excited to welcome such an esteemed group of panelists. So I'm going to ask all of our panelists to put their cameras on, and beginning with Korin Diane Williams, who is the founder and CEO of Chronicle Media, which she co-founded with her partner, Monique Nash, in 2017, with the mission of producing diverse content for and about women. Last year, they produced Lifetime's highest rated Christmas movie called Merry Little Christmas, which, guess what? Yay, there's a sequel happening. Which is fabulous. Korin has had great success as a TV executive and, as I call, a recovering agent, producing hits like A&E's remake of Roots, NBC's Truth Be Told with Octavia Spencer, and ABC's Uncle Buck with Neil Long. Welcome, Korin. Thanks for joining us.
It's great to be here.
So next, I want to welcome Marley Diaz, who Time Magazine has recognized as one of the 25 most influential teen. She is the executive producer and host of the NAACP Image Award nominated Netflix show Bookmarks, Celebrating Black Voices, and she is the founder of the global hashtag 1000 Black Girl Books campaign, which collects and donates children's books that feature Black female lead characters. Marley is also an award-winning author of Marley Diaz, Let's Get It Done, to teach kids to use their passion to create change. Welcome, Marley.
Hi, everybody.
And now, our next guest panelist has starred in so many iconic films and TV shows that her credits are endless. We all know and love her from her award-winning and viciously seductive character V from Orange is the New Black, and as activist Amelia Boynton in the Academy Award-nominated film Selma, and now starring as Viola Marcet alongside Queen Latifah in the hit show Equalizer on CBS. Please welcome SAG Award winner, Lorraine Toussaint.
Hi, everyone.
And of course, my paper fell down. So thanks, everyone, for joining us. And hopefully I'm going to do 3 rounds of questions, but each question is going to be kind of meaty for each one of our panelists. And we did take a look at some of the questions that came in earlier, which reframed. So round 1, Korin, I'm going to start with you. When we spoke earlier this week, you mentioned the burden of being the only one and having gumption. Can you share with us how your experience as an agent led you to pursue this path to disrupt the Hollywood system and use your power to take control of the narrative around stories for Black women?
Well, thank you, Madeline. I actually started as an agent assistant and then sort of went to become a producer. And I think for me, the reason why it was important to become a producer was because I didn't see anyone like me standing up for the voices of Black women and women that were underrepresented in the business. It was sort of going through the executive ranks, working on what I would say the inside at your different your agencies, your studios, and your networks, and really not having a platform for our voices. So for me, it was, how do I get out there and be able to tell the stories that are representative of what I want to tell? At the initial point of this, it was really only stories, to your point in the slides, of that Jezebel trope, that mammy trope. And I knew, and I know women that represent all different types of women, all different types of Black women. So it was important to me that I be able to make change, really. That really was the part of it. How do we make change and get our voices out there?
Thank you so much. So in terms of using your voice and being an inspiration, Marley, I'm going to throw to you next. Now you're the old age of 16, and you've said that as an avid reader at 10 years old, most of the books you saw in class were about white boys and dogs. How did you come up with the idea for hashtag 1000 Black Girl Books, and what has happened over the 4 years since you launched your campaign?
First of all, thank you for having me. 1000 Black Girl Books comes out of, my passion and love for reading, like you said. My fifth grade teacher and essentially all my teachers had emphasized how important it was to learn about the world around us, to read books and, gain a vocabulary and an understanding of the world. But the world that we were seeing was mainly about white men and their dogs. So I read Old Yeller, I read the Shiloh series, I read Where the Red Fern Grows, and that was all in 1 year. And I began to question to myself, as someone who has so many books in their home and whose parents had always thought that reading was one of the greatest things you could do for a child, why was that the only, the only world that I was able to have access to in public school? The only place where I would see and value the experiences were of white men. And I began to feel troubled by that, because I knew that there were stories out there that had Black girls as the main characters. I had read them, I had loved them, I had cherished them, and I wanted other people to be able to have that experience as well. And I knew how much it had allowed to boost my confidence, to the point of being able to challenge that idea, that I had seen that I was capable of doing great things. I could be an astronaut, a supermodel, an actress, whatever I wanted to be, because I had read books that had affirmed my identity and kind of pushed me to do more with what I cared about and who I was. So when I talked to my mom and, expressed that complaint, she challenged me and she said, what are you going to do about it? How can you use your personal experiences, what you know, what you love, to do something for others? And now over the past 5 years, we've been able to collect 13,000 books where Black girls are the main characters. So it started with my own personal frustration, based off of my teacher. But after learning more, we realized that this is an issue that so many students face, both Black girls and all kinds of students, where their experiences are not reflected, or they're not seeing diverse representation in books at all.
Fantastic. So I want to close the loop on this for the thousands of people that are watching today. If someone wanted to get involved, if they wanted to participate, how do they learn more? How does it work? And also, do you have a list of all of these fabulous books somewhere, and where would somebody find that?
I love that question so much, and I probably should have said that before, so I appreciate you telling me that. But for people that are interested in supporting 1000 Black Girl Books, you can go to marleydias.com. We got the domain, we got everything, so you can see. And but we also have a website called grassrootscommunityfoundation.org that has a list of 1000 of the titles that I've been able to collect. A lot of these are independent or self-made booksellers and authors, so it's really important that we support them. One of the main reasons why we don't have diverse books in our public school systems is because they have to buy these books in like thousands and thousands. But when you're an independent bookseller, you don't have the factory capacity to make books for the entire state of New Jersey or the entire state of Texas. So by having this book list, which is available online and in the back of my book, Marley Dias Gets It Done, and so can you. So if you purchase the book, you'll get 500. If you go to the website, you get 1,000. It's to support others, and that I got the opportunity to publish something. So why not help others that have motivated me to want to write, have motivated me to want to, be a part of really amazing things and start 1000 Black Girl Books. So there's digital resources through the website, and there are also resources through the back of my book.
My final question before I'm going to move on is, so with 13,000 books, is this a US based thing? Is this an international thing?
So 1000 Black Girl Books is international, which is something that I'm extremely proud of. Actually, the first place we donated to was a school my mom had attended in Retreat, St. Mary, Jamaica. So we donated about 12,000 books. I mean, not 12,000 books, 1,200 books to that area. So it's been international. We receive books from anywhere, and on the website, you can figure out and find the location you would like to donate to, and then we redisperse them. So we find titles for preschools, we find titles for adults, and make sure that we're doing our best effort to make sure that schools that have primarily Black students see themselves, and schools that do not have as many Black students to also learn more about Black experiences and Black people. So we've been able to receive donations from Japan, Canada, donations in Ghana, and Haiti. And it's been a really, really fun experience for me to also be able to use the power of social media, a new tool, especially for someone who's in Gen Z, to help other people understand the importance of diversity and promote the idea that Black girl stories need to be treated, respected and heard.
Well, there was a big woohoo posted in our Q&A chat. So woohoo to you. And now I'm going to move on to Lorraine. So first of all, it's great to have another only child from Brooklyn in the house. So whoop, whoop, only child in Brooklyn. That's great. You said that Diane Carroll inspired you, first of all, to get into entertainment. And by the way, folks, she went to Juilliard, okay, and pursue acting. And you started out in theater. I read the questions. We have a lot of actors that submitted questions in advance. And so for our actors who are watching today, can you tell us a little bit about your journey? And also, as an actor starting out, do you believe, because you started in theater, is theater more welcoming? Does it not matter anymore? So if you could please share with us your journey and just kind of what you're seeing and what would you recommend for up and coming actors?
Oh gosh, hi. Oh, Marley, you rock. I have a 16-year-old girl, dope, totally. She's unbelievable. Just couldn't smile broader. Um, I have no idea what I would recommend to up and coming actors because I just started so many years ago, and the business now is so different. It's so different. There's so many more platforms. There's so many more outlets. There's so many ways in to this business now that I don't know if I would necessarily recommend going through theater, because when I came up, that was the way I was trained as a thespian, and I was going to pay my dues in the American theater. Well, the American theater barely exists anymore. Even before COVID, you know, all the theaters, the bread and butter theaters that I cut my teeth on and trained in, many of them don't exist anymore. The whole Lord theater system. And so I don't know if I would recommend that necessarily. I am an advocate for training because I do believe that acting is a craft, and it does warrant being treated as such. In the face of, there's this whole new idea that the goal oftentimes now is celebrity. It isn't necessarily craftsmanship, and so I definitely stand very much on one side of this divide, because what I do is an art form. What many young actors are coming up in search of is celebrity. Two very different animals. So first you've got to identify where do you stand, what are your goals, and what are you going after? And for me, I knew that I was going to be a journeyman actor. I was going to go the distance. Honest to goodness, you can only go the distance if you've got some decent training under your belt and you go at it as a craft. So what would I recommend? I don't know, my love. I would say that if you wanted to be a real actor, get some training, go to school, figure it out. Apprenticeship is very important. Learn from other actors. Find the venues where you can learn. Take those small parts. Take whatever parts are given to you and pay attention. Get off your phone and pay attention. If you're on a set and you've got a break, stand to the side and look at what's happening and listen to what's happening and pay attention to all of the different jobs that are being done while you're on a break, because it's not a solitary art form. You know, I see young actors, they get their phones out and they go away as if, you know, this is it all sort of magically happens. It doesn't. It doesn't, and everyone on the set is equally respected. You can't do what you do without them. And so I'm a journeyman kind of actress. And so I'm an advocate for training. Long answer is an advocate for training. And there's still some really wonderful schools and venues where an actor can be trained.
So Lorraine, can you explain, you said, and you've used this, the journeyman, you're a journeyman actor. What does that mean?
It means that when when I was Marley's age in the High School of Performing Arts, and I was given the role, I was offered a leading role on a Broadway show at the time. It was called Runaways. And at the time, that school said to me, you can't, if you take this show, you're going to have to leave school, because back then they believed that you had to be fully baked before you were put out into the world as an actor. And they said, if you do this, you're going to have to leave school. You'll be in this Broadway show, but you won't graduate. And I wrestled with it, and I wrestled with it with my mom. And one of my teachers back then said to me, he said, if they want you now, they'll want you more later. And I listened to that. I turned down the show, and I finished performing arts, and I finished school. And I think early on, I knew that I was going to go the distance. And as such, I still love what I do. I love it, love it, love it, love it. I'm going to be like Diane Carroll. I'm like Cicely Tyson. You know, I'll do a talk show in the morning, lay down and go, ooh, I think I need a little nap, and then just die. Because I can't think of a better way to go in your 90s. And I will hopefully continue to reinvent myself in a non-self-conscious way, where it's about promoting some sort of image, but actually continue to reinvent myself by virtue of what interests me, and digging deeper and diving deeper into the human condition.
So I want to close the loop on this, because I've read that you say that now you're approaching X years old, which I just turned myself. You're risky. You're becoming risky. What does that mean for you?
I'm getting braver, and I'm 60 plus. And so, you know, you get to a point where it's like, what the hell? Who gives a crap? You know, what do I have to lose? You don't, I find I don't have to defend an image of myself and an image that I've created in the business, because as your previous speaker was saying, you know, they've tried to stereotype me. It's not personal. This is what this business does. It wants, you get something, a wonderful product, and you think, well, let's get 5 more of those exact ones. And you like that girl, let's get 5 more of that exact same type of girl. And so it's nothing personal, but I've had to push against that for my whole career. And so I find that brave means surprising myself in my work, by the work I choose. Choosing work that no one thinks that I would have chosen. No one thought I would have chosen necessarily Orange. That was a departure. Doing Badlands in Ireland that's a departure. Doing martial arts, a badass martial artist, is a departure. What's interesting to me, and frankly, what scares me, what kind of work actually scares me? Because if you're not a little bit scared, you're not doing something right. You've got to be a little bit scared. And Marley, I'm glad you're shaking your head, because I say to my 16-year-old, get comfortable with discomfort. Because if you're not a little bit scared, you're probably not risking. You're not taking a risk. You're not on the edge of some precipice going, I don't know what's going to happen. That's a great place to be as an artist.
Thank you so much, Lorraine. And of course, you have inspired us, and you continue to inspire us. So Korin, I actually want you to build on top of what Lorraine was saying, but you've said that you're educating at the same time that you're trying to close the deal, so you have the whole art of the deal going on. So I do want to talk about that, and I want to talk about the opportunities that you're creating to tell authentic Black stories. But I'd like you to comment also, because we have a lot of young, up and coming actors. We have people who want to be you. If you have an opinion on if you are an actor, go this way, that way, if you have, because of the things that you're developing and what's being bought, right? Before
Yeah.
it's even cast. So I'd love for you to, if you can just, I know that's like a multi-part, but if you can take both of those, that would be great.
Yeah, no, I first of all, I want to say, like Miss Toussaint said it perfectly in saying being brave, right? If you're not taking risks, you're not going to get where you want to go. And I think, it's interesting as we talk about the different platforms that are now available to you. And I think as an actor or an actress, you can take those smaller roles. You can use YouTube as a platform. You can use Instagram. All of those things, even when I started, were not available. So I think in terms of becoming a successful actor, you just have to take the roles. And I agree with that because that builds your reel. Nowadays the studios and the networks are looking at those platforms to find the next new talent. And I agree, it is about being the journeyman. Sometimes it's not about being the celebrity. And that is kind of what those platforms set many actors up to be, but it's also a place where studio casting executives, they all go to find their next person. So I think it's important for actors and actresses, specifically Black actresses, to really take the risk and put themselves out there in ways in which that are not traditional anymore. But I think, still the training, all of those things are important. So just to sort of stand on what Miss Toussaint is saying, like those are the things that you have to do. And I think for me in production and producing, really it's just finding that fresh face. I think the unique thing about Kronicle Media and what we do is we're always looking for new talent. There are a lot of producers who do not want to work with new talent, that are not taking the risk on new talent. And that is from your actors, your actresses, your writers, your creators, because those people are going to build the pipeline. If we continue to allow Hollywood to go to your tried and true, you're not going to build a pipeline that then sort of speaks to your research on Black women and Black women being represented in media, from behind the scenes to in front of the camera. And I think for us, it's really been important in educating our studio buyers, our agencies, our network buyers to say, look, these are people you need to know, and these are people you need to take risks on. And that is, been our sort of charge as a new production company, because people don't do it. And so I think that if we begin to take risks on the new, then you're going to see people that you've never seen in front of the camera, in your writers' rooms, and also as your buyers and as your people and larger roles in the networks in the studio. So it's kind of a systematic change that needs to happen. And that education is from us sort of saying, look, we've worked on the inside. We know what the inside looks like. Now let's talk to people who are sort of up and coming and new. So that's all part of the education. And then when on the creative side of the education, it really is talking about, Black people in different spaces, Black women in different spaces. Like we can't always be the strong Black woman. We can't always be sort of the woman that is leading the charge. We are complicated women. And if you have women that are writing women, that are women of color writing women, if you have women producers that are producing content that represents Black women, if you have Black women buyers, if you have Black women agents, if you have Black women chairmen and CEOs, which we're seeing now, then you have change. Then it fosters change. And then not just one. It can't be tokenism. So there's a whole part of educating the system that we are working to do, even as producers.
So I want to build on that a little bit more, because we obviously have a lot of writers, here who are trying to get their stories told, what is your methodology? Like, what is your process? I mean, clearly, you and your partner have a sense of taste, you have connections, you know what the market is looking for, but how do you do what you do? How do people find you? How do you get your source material? Are you acquiring books? Are you, like you said, you read a poem somebody did and you're like, okay, this is a newbie, I'm going to try them. Like, what's your method?
So I would say the reason why we're able to do what we do, and we started our company during a time that was pre Me Too, pre sort of everyone having their own production company. We just decided we were ready to do it, and that was because I had spent 16 years. I know I look like I just graduated high school, but really, no, been in the business a long time. And we had spent a really long time on what we say, the inside of the business, right? So that meant we rose up through the ranks. That meant building the relationships with the agents, building the relationships with the studio and network executives. And at that time, being the only one really on the inside, you know, as a product of tokenism, and really, but fostering those relationships and not being afraid to speak up, not being afraid to say, I cannot be the only Black woman in this room. We need, and not having plug and play content. There needs to be authentic voices, authentic casting, authentic ways in which we produce. And so what that did was really, you know, I looked around the business and I said, look, I'm not going to be put out for ageism. I'm not going to be put out for racism. I'm going to chart my own path. And I did that along with my business partner who shared the same views. Once we sort of made those connections, then for us, it was, let's start our own thing. And people, because we had so many relationships in the business, they looked at us as producers the moment we started because they knew us. It was also based on our taste. It was also based on sort of our ability to work with new voices and talent and to sell their projects. And so that sort of garnered our relationships in the business. In terms of what we do and how we find people, I would just say that I had a boss who told me all great ideas come from everywhere. So I never discriminated. I took every meeting, I took every phone call, no matter which way they came. And that was outside of the agency network and sort of recommendations. It was, if you contacted me and I felt like that was an idea that I was passionate about, that we believed in, then we were going to advocate for that. And that is the biggest word, right? Advocacy. So you have to advocate for the people that you may not know or may not be the top person in the room. And so that's what we did. And so in that, and having the knowledge and the relationships that we had in the business, then we started to foster other talent. And in that, we were able in our first year to sell, you know, over 5 projects as an independently owned and financed production company without a studio deal, without sort of anyone saying, okay, look at these people. And then we canvassed the community and said, we're here and we're going to make change and we believe in making change.
And you are. And we're thrilled that you are. I just want to close the loop on one question before I move back to Marley is, you know, there's a lot of gatekeepers in Hollywood, right? We talk about systemic disruption and new models and et cetera. So if somebody has a story, if they are a writer, I mean, do you allow submissions on your website or, and how would people actually find you if they have a script or they have something that they want you to take a look at?
Yes. So if we receive a submission, typically we'll send out a release form so that then we can read and review that. And if we like it and we're passionate about it, we will advocate for it. We have 2 young writers right now who really just called us. And they had this idea we said, okay, well, we took a meeting. They talked to us about the idea. Monique and I really loved the idea, and we sent them a release form. And now we have them in development with a major studio. And they were writers that people did not know they didn't have a lot of credits, but we also worked with them as producers. We really worked their concept, gave them sharp direction, and then from there, now we have them. They're basically going to be sold into development. So for us, really, again, we didn't know that that project was coming. We didn't know who they were. And then we got to know them and we advocated for them. And that's why I truly believe advocacy is also a huge part of what we all do.
And we need to do. So Marley, you know, building on what we were talking about with Korin in terms of advocacy and building new voices, for those of us who may not know, can you tell us a little bit about why Augusta Baker was so important to you? And then also, I'd love for you to tell us about why you wrote the book, and now you're in TV, and what's the impact of all those things?
I wouldn't go so far to say that I'm in TV, but I appreciate that. Okay, so beginning with Augusta Baker. So my mom runs a foundation called the Grassroots Community Foundation, which is a public health institution focused on social justice and the aspects of health, from sexual, mental, the economics of health, and physical health. So she's been doing this since before I was born, and I've always seen her as a problem solver. So I think that also contributes to why I started 1000 Black Girl Books, because I felt very mobilized to do something. Like if I wanted to wear different shoes, then I could just talk to her and say, Mom, I really want a new pair of shoes. If I didn't like my lunch, we could find, you know, a new option. I'd always had that kind of voice from her. But one of the few and final years that I was working with her on camp and being like a counselor, you know, I felt like I was super cool. We were able to do a research project, and we had to select someone that we didn't know, a Black woman or Black man who we didn't know, that we felt very inspired by, or we had felt had used a sociological concept that we cared a lot about. So one thing I care a lot about, which you guys have both talked about, is kind of cultural capital, that we're able to use our experiences, our training as Black people, Black women and Black girls, our Caribbeanness, where we're from, how much money we make, who our parents are. And it's a concept created by an academic named Taro Yasso, and utilizing our personal gifts that are, you know, regardless of money or any of those things, to help others and to advocate for others. So I'd always been interested in this concept, and I think it's where 1000 Black Girl Books really started for me, is that I felt that me being a Black girl was a really powerful thing that other people couldn't take away from me no matter what, and I was able to use that to start the campaign. So I wanted to find somebody in history who had done that as well, and I stumbled upon Augusta Baker. So she was a former educator and librarian who then became the head of the children's department at the New York Public Library in the 1940s, 50s, and 60s. So she was extremely focused on telling the stories and having book lists like I do of Black stories. And she was able to essentially redesign the way that the New York Public Library worked for children, whether it was through free breakfast programs, whether it was through those book lists, and making it more of a cultural center for all kinds of kids, especially kids in Harlem. So I really admired her a lot. And I learned that she'd used her social capital, her understanding of what Black kids need as a young Black person from New York, and then taking that into an actual system, changing the system. And now the New York Public Library has done so much to support me in my work in diversity. So Augusta Baker means a lot to me, because I think even though I had no idea who she was when I started 1000 Black Girl Books, she is a huge influence and a huge example of how history can repeat itself for the better. And that I've been able to do what she's done without knowing her, without meeting her, but I feel extremely inspired and empowered by what she was able to do with the library. Then you asked me about my book. So right there, my dad's pretty smart. He got the product placement right there, but it's published by Scholastic, and the book came out in 2018, I believe, or 19, I don't know. It feels like so long. This year has been so long. I have no idea when anything ever happened. But I've been interested in writing since I was basically super young, because I'd read so much. And I felt like there's so much I could just say about anything. So Scholastic reached out to me and was interested in telling the story of how 1000 Black Girl Books started, but obviously not as a memoir, because I was 12 at the time that they reached out to me. So we wanted to focus on how can you provide advice as a young person without, seeming all knowing or extremely wise, because I'm not extremely wise. I'm not a senior. I don't have, years of experience, but I do have important questions. And I wanted to propose those questions to kids and parents who might have not thought about social justice as something that kids could be a part of. So the book itself is very small, and it's kind of talking about my own personal life and my journey, but largely talking about people like Bob Marley, who I'm named after, women like Augusta Baker, Ida B. Wells, people that I care about and I've learned so much about, to educate and empower other young kids to think more about their own potential to help others, whether it's on a large or smaller scale. One of the parts that I really emphasize in the book, and I try to emphasize to all kids, is that social activism starts within your actual community. I think if you ask any kid what they want to solve or change in the world, they say world hunger or world peace. But it's really important that we focus on things that we actually experience in everyday life. And for me, that was through reading. For some kids, it's through sports. For other kids, it's through drama and acting, and encouraging kids to think about their own lives and their experiences so that they can achieve, smaller goals that mean a lot to small groups of people, and then moving to kind of the space where I'm at, where it's 13,000 books and it's international. But it started very small. So encouraging kids to think about their own impacts they can make without feeling like it's too lofty of a goal to want to help people or care about the world.
And
then
because,
you
go
asked me
ahead.
about bookmarks.
I want to
Okay.
get to the shameless promotion. Where can people find that book?
The book is available at Target, Amazon, Walmart, and basically anywhere. It's called Marley Dias Gets It Done, and So Can You. It is a beautiful book with a bunch of colors and pictures so that if your kid does not like to read, they can still enjoy it without reading a single word. That was a very conscious decision for me because I know a lot of young kids do not like to read. It's one of my proudest accomplishments, and it's available at Scholastic Book Fairs every year, and it's something that I will always be very proud of. And then you also asked about, thank you so much. You guys are so cool. I'm taking notes in my head, and my mom was watching this taking notes. But the last thing you asked me about was bookmarks. So similar to that, I knew I wasn't an actor, and I knew that as much as I appreciated the craft, that was just not something that I was super interested in. But I am a fairly articulate and confident person. So I'd always wanted to do things that were involving hosting, asking other people questions, doing interview series. I'd done so many podcasts and speeches. So Netflix originally had kind of asked me to think about what diversity meant to me, and I'd done smaller things with them, whether it was panels or interviews. And then they proposed the idea that I actually be a part of a series that they were focused on for telling Black stories. This happened about 3 weeks after the passing of George Floyd, which is really important and powerful to me because I'd spent a lot of time kind of just being really upset and hurt and troubled by what had happened and the amount of silence I saw from people who I thought had the resources to do something about it. So after Netflix reached out and they said, we really want to do something with you where you're hosting and allowing the stories of Black kids to be told, I was so proud that, there was someone that was really interested in hearing my voice in a moment where I felt like for once, my voice was not being open and respected in the way I wanted it to because of such a traumatic and deeply saddening event. So we began to talk about the books that I wanted to see, and a curriculum was developed by an academic named Dr. Kevin Clark, who focuses with the American Library Association on what kinds of books do Black kids need to see and what messages are we sending about, liberty, justice, confidence, and unity. So he really focused on concepts like that in the development of bookmarks and created a curriculum. So then they had me look through that curriculum, read it. I'm not a teacher, but I read it as hard as I could. I tried my best to select and make conscious decisions about the kind of celebrities who would be reading the books and the books and what they meant themselves. So that started originally with, just me hosting, and then became me being an executive producer and now being one of the youngest executive producers in a project with Netflix, which I'm really excited about, to now being nominated for Outstanding Children's Program for an NAACP Image Award. So a lot of crazy things have happened over the past summer and over the past couple of years, but it really did start from just my community interest and passion. And similar to what Ms. Toussaint was talking about, is that it didn't start as a goal of celebrity. And now it has kind of grown into a larger thing of celebrity. But it did start with solely wanting to change something in my community. And I always want to emphasize that to kids because I don't want them to think that my experience is an exception. This may happen to you if you decide to help others, but this is not the goal of what I created. That 1,000 Black Girl Books was started because I love to read, and I want other kids to be able to love to read and to feel like their voice matters when and how they read. And it is now blown up into thousands of followers and getting to travel places and meet cool people, which I value extremely and has made my life so much better. But I think it's also so important to emphasize for kids that that is not the goal of doing this at all. And then for parents to not make their kids or feel pressured to encourage their kids to want to be famous by helping others. That was never my intention. And I think it's important to draw that line for all people to know that being a part of a Netflix show, creating something like that is something I will always be proud of, but it is not going to be the product of everyone helping their community or servicing others, and that it's not the goal of helping your community and servicing others.
Although our next president may be Marley Diaz. So stay tuned, people, because I could see that, for you. So Lorraine, I know you have a heart out. So I want to get to you as well, is you've talked about the power of no, which has kind of served what I consider as a North Star. How have you used that to navigate the material? Because you did say you will do what's interesting to you. So how have you navigated that to either select, past roles, current roles, material you like? And then I also want, because it's all about shameless promotion. We know you are fabulous on The Equalizer, but I heard that you may have a wonderful feature film coming out, Concrete Cowboy, and I'd love for you to tell us all about that before you have to go.
Concrete Cowboys with Idris Elba. It's about a little known cowboy community that exists today in urban Philadelphia. Philadelphia is one of the few states where you can actually have a horse as a pet. And so it's not unusual to go and, it's very urban, impoverished areas where you see horses tied to the stoops of people's houses, or people have keep their horses in their basements or their apartments even. It's a tradition that comes from the 1800s of Black people post-slavery, where they came up north and they delivered washing and clothes and milk and food by horse and carriages to the outlying neighborhoods. And as gentrification came along and the Industrial Revolution came along, they got squeezed and squeezed and squeezed further and deeper into the urban community, but they didn't want to give up their horses. And so in the middle of Philadelphia, there's this very small bona fide cowboy community. And so our director, Ricky Staub, he wanted to bring attention to this community. Number one, there are very few of these stables left. And these stables have acted as places, safe havens for kids to keep them off of gangs and get them off the street and give them the love and the passion for horses. There's a very famous private school in Los Angeles where the first year of the 4 years you go into that school, you're paying $80,000 a year. They give you a horse and you have to shepherd this horse through 4 years. So in this community, they're saving lives with these horses, and they are bona fide cowboys. So this is a film about this community. And I play Nessie. She's the owner of the stable that we're focused on. And it's a wonderful family story and a rescue story for young people also. So that's Concrete Cowboys, where we're going to be on Netflix. Ms. Marley, we're going to be on Netflix in, I believe, in March. And the power of the no, I think as a young actress, when honestly, the whole point of it is to take pretty much whatever you're offered. You got to work. You just got to get on the boards. You got to get experience. You've got to earn your stripes. But even then, I remember walking into an audition, and I was in my 20s at the time and just fresh out of Juilliard, and it was for a film that was shooting in Jamaica. I'm Caribbean, I'm Trinidadian, Miss Marley. And so I felt that I was quite equipped to play this role, and she was a yard girl, and so she was very hip and very cool, and at the time very cute, sexy. I was wearing a little short skirt and a little cute, and I was all that. And I walked into the audition, and the then star of the film, who I was the director's choice, but not his choice. And there was a competition between he and the director. He proceeded to then tell me that, well, you know, I just don't think that your accent is authentic. And then proceeded to demonstrate for me what that Caribbean dialect should sound like. And then he said, and you know, and I was wearing a skirt this big. And he said, well, you know, I really can't tell what kind of body you've got under those, you know, you're wearing so many clothes. And I remember looking at him and going, oh no, I am Janet Bean's daughter. This is not going to fly. And I said something smart ass to him. And I walked out of the audition. And I remember back then there were pay phones. And I got to the corner and I called my agent and I said, I'm not getting that one, because that was a no. No, thank you. Because in that moment, I could have shown him what kind of body I had. It could have gone all sorts of ways. But I learned early the power of the no. And no is not a threat. No is not, you've got to have your own personal moral, you've got to have your own moral compass. And I got that from an amazing mother, thank God, in this industry, that it's been able to guide me throughout my career. And you must know when to say no. And there will be other opportunities. Don't you fret, but be brave enough to say no when no is necessary. And so that has served me well in terms of in an industry where sometimes it seems like we have very little control, and where it's set up for you to believe that you have very little control, you actually do. You always have the power of the no. And the no often means yes to something else.
Well, when one door closes, another one opens.
Absolutely. But my God, those hallways are really hard sometimes, but hang in there. You will get to that open window.
Really sage advice. So I know we're running out on time, but I think we have time for one or two questions. I know our panelists have a heart out. So I don't know if Nosh was going to pop up and read us two questions, for any of our panelists.
Sure. I have a couple questions that I can read off. So the first question is, how do you suggest overcoming the pushback of self-identified gender or sex allies who reject intersectionality as an imperative because they can, quote unquote, only focus on one thing?
That was such a great question. What the heck does it mean?
So I think that they're
Am I
trying.
the only one? Am I the only one that's going?
I could take a part of it.
Atta girl.
Well, I think I can talk to one thing that my mom has taught me, especially about my interactions with teachers and with people that I've done interviews with, is that a lot of the times I get questions about being like a girl boss and being someone that has been able to empower other girls. But I always have to talk and speak to my Blackness and conversations about being a girl, that being the point in which I'm both Black and a girl changes my experience, that I don't have the same liberties as white women to express myself in certain spaces. and I have the same difficulties as Black men to express myself in certain spaces. But there is that kind of point in which I'm both Black and a girl that makes my experience different. So when we have, events like Black History Month and Women's History Month, which both come back to back, I celebrate both of those equally because I share the experience of being both a Black person who wants to see Black history, some of the main figures which are men like Martin Luther King, and someone who celebrates women's history, who some of the biggest features might be women like Margaret Thatcher, who have completely different beliefs and ideologies about what it means to be Black or what it means to be a woman than me. But when it comes to being in spaces where I'm, told to focus on being a girl or focus on being Black, you have to reject those. And like you were saying, you have to say no. There's no way for me to solely think about my life as a girl. There is no way for me to solely think of my life as being Black. I exist as both of those things. I exist as a Jamaican American girl. We had a Jamaican flag in the background, but we had to take it out because it looked like it was sticking out of my head. But I experienced all these things together. And recognizing that especially comes through storytelling, that in any actor's performance, any writer's story, you see those intersections. You see how someone is both middle class and both white. You see how someone is both a man and is a father. You see those things interacting with one another, and it's important to prioritize that. And I think when it comes to saying that, you have to stand in your ground and recognize and show, especially when it comes to interactions with white people about representation, is that so many white people understand what it feels like to be represented and they don't have to think about it. So when we come into spaces where we're pushing for representation, we have to remind others that they have had the blessing of always seeing themselves, that they always understand their experiences, and that they don't have to wait to celebrate who they are, that it's always presented to them as an opportunity. So when we talk about intersectionality, it is recognizing who we are all the time, that there's no way to compartmentalize your identity because your identity is developed by all those things happening at once. I don't wait to be a girl. I don't wait to be Black. They happen all together. And then recognizing that and rejecting anyone who tries to limit that.
You are brilliant.
Oh, amen to that. Korin, Lorraine, anything else you want to add before we have to say goodbye to everybody?
You can't, I can't add to Marley.
I think I'm with you, Ms. Toussaint. I mean, what do you say? You answered that brilliantly, Marley, and thank you for that.
Brilliantly. This is our future. I'm so excited at the prospect that this is our future.
Yes, absolutely. Keep it up, Marley. Keep going, girl. You got it.
Thank you so much. I had one more thing I wanted to say for all the people in the chat that are being so kind. A lot of them talked about my mom, which I'm sure she will appreciate. She has a book coming out on March 2nd with Random House called Parent Like It Matters, which I should have talked about. And I wanted to remember before we left that she talks so much more about her experience of raising me, which I can't talk about because I'm the one being raised. I don't know what she decided to do. But her story lists out more about what parents can do and what educators can do, and talks about her experience as being a Jamaican immigrant and being a mom and being a professor and being all these things. So I want to say thank you so much, even though she's obviously not in the room, for all the kind words that everyone has said about her, because she's taught me to be who I am and she's my biggest influence. So make sure to support her as much as you support me because she created me. So always give credit to my mom.
So for those of you who we weren't able to get to all your questions, if you have provided us with your email, we will follow up with our panelists and do our best to get your questions, answered. So I'm seeing some emails in there, but if you did, that would be great. And I just want to say, thank you so much to Lorraine, to Marley, to Korin, to Dr. McTaggart, to Dr. Caroline Heldman, to our dear partners at Facebook and SAG-AFTRA. Thank you, everyone. Thanks for joining us. Have a wonderful day or wonderful evening.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.